great flow reports.
Just to confirm our understanding is correct. Because I think that data
Love seeing up in the rafters, checking things
I
out.
like watching it.
Yeah, it's kind of cool.
Yeah.
Welcome back to Senate Education, Tuesday, March 14th. Ms. St. James, I have copies here of a revised miscellaneous education bill, which
Thank you. Oh, yeah.
so if we could, there are a couple of things that still need to be done on this before it sees prime time. But let's start at the back, and since that looks like one of the spots where most of the changes were made, and then I'll walk the committee through a couple of sections that I heard from people on to make sure they're okay with that. Then we'll go from there. But this is the driver's education pilot program, and our agency of education weighed in on this. And this is language from AOE, and I'm hoping we can get close to finding a solution to something we're, I think, trying to solve as it relates to driver's ed. And Senator Hashim, I should let you know, actually I will forward it to you from the Agency of Transportation, and I believe the Agency of Education, and perhaps the Chair of Appropriations, don't support monies coming from AOT for this. But I will forward it to you so you can see it and their explanation, and I will absolutely leave it to you if you're interested in challenging their reasoning. In fact, I will maybe even ask them to come in if we have time on Thursday to explain the reasoning. We can just use that maybe as a possibility. But I do believe Beth and I may have worked on some funding language. Yes, consult with, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so let's look at section 7. You would just take us through what we're doing here.
Sure, thank you. Beth St. James, Office of Legislative Counsel. So we're on draft 5.1 of the miscellaneous bill with today's date at the very top. Section 7 begins at the very bottom of page 13 with just the section, the reader assistance heading and the section heading, which has not changed at all. Substance of the program and the changes start on page 14. So previously the term model program was used.
Okay.
So the change around that is calling it a pilot program based on feedback from AOE.
Okay.
And then previously, the language required the Agency of Education and the Department of Motor Vehicles to establish a regional pilot program for student driver clinics by, I believe it was October 15th, and this draft pushes that out to December 15th, 2023. Nothing about the program itself, the substance or the purpose of the program has changed. It's to provide, it's to establish regional pilot student driver clinics to provide the required minimum 6 hours behind the wheel instruction for students.
Yeah,
It's not about the students, though, isn't it? It's about the trainers. I'm completely lost. So we're training the trainers. Isn't that the whole problem, that the facility went away in New Hampshire?
That was my understanding as well, but we have the Agency of Education in here to talk to us a little bit about, no, please stay there, Mr. Fisher, if you don't mind. My understanding was indeed we were trying to get more people trained up, and is that not possible, or?
For the record, Ted Fisher, Vermont Agency of Education, and the agency's Director of Communications and Legislative Affairs. That is the goal. And I think those efforts are ongoing.
Okay.
Some of that work is being done by the Agency of Education, the Department of Motor Vehicles. As we noted at the very beginning of our conversation, when I was delivering on behalf of Secretary French's written testimony, we had talked about we're looking at some changes to the VSBPE rules. That's the State Board for Professional Educators. and looking at some, and I'm going to reference this. I had prepared at the request of the chair some remarks on what the pilot program might look like. So I'm happy to give that. But one of the moving parts of this is the ability to work with VTBLC or other providers. VTBLC is the Vermont Online Learning Collaborative, to essentially offer virtual driver's ed for the classroom portion. And then there is a lot of work being done on some of the educator pipeline and preparation work. My understanding is that there's not a really easy legislative nail to be hammered down on this, but that work is ongoing.
So
It is, however, just to, sorry.
no,
clarify.
please, no, absolutely.
Secretary French offered this pilot program that is now in the bill as a, I don't want to say stopgap measure, because if it's very successful, it's a model that we can pursue statewide, but as an alternative to address not the pipeline problem, but the immediate shortfall of driver educators. So we're trying to make better use of the driver educators we have, rather than address the sourcing.
So is it safe to say that there are things happening out there in the agency that'll get us eventually to the point of training trainers?
Yes, and I don't believe it's just the agency. I think my understanding from talking to Joe, who was the gentleman who came in to speak to you twice prior, is that
Yeah.
their associations are working on it, and possibly, potentially, I don't want to speak for him, but potentially in conversation with some of our educator prep programs. I can't provide anything specific that isn't hearsay on that.
So in the meantime, we still have a situation, as this stuff is happening out there, there's still a situation around making certain that kids get certified
Correct.
soon and early.
6 kids or 6 trainers? 6 trainers that can train.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah, well, let's just take this for a second.
Yeah, my
The
understanding.
model so the pilot program to provide the required minimum 6 hours of behind the wheel instruction by a certified driver ed. Let's just go through the language and then
Okay,
we can ask
all
questions.
right.
So the pilot, so we're on page 14,
Correct.
starting on line 1. So this language requires that on or before December 15th, 2023, the Agency of Education and the Department of Motor Vehicles, working with interested school districts,
Mhm.
shall establish a regional pilot student driver clinic program to provide the required minimum 6 hours of behind-the-wheel instruction by a certified driver education instructor as required by State Board of Education rule. So not the classroom piece, the on-the-road piece.
Right. But what's missing from that sentence is who's the training for?
It's for the
It's
kids.
the kids.
That's the wrong head approach. I think we're supposed to be training the trainers who then train the kids. I thought that was the whole point.
Well, and what the agency is telling us is they agree, and that you guys are working on that with AOT and DMV or other groups, and that some of that entails teacher certification programs, things like that. So in the meantime, while you're working on this, we realize that there is a problem out there. Kids are not, that is the ultimate problem. Kids are not learning how to drive. So can we kind of get some bucks and get this, call it a pilot, call it a model program going ASAP, so kids aren't not able to get to summer jobs, able to, do what they need to do to help their families, enjoy themselves, etc. Is that accurate, Ted?
That's correct. Yeah, I think there are multiple avenues of inquiry being pursued.
To Senator Weeks's question, is there something that we can do that's not being done already by the agency to get to train trainers, or is that?
I don't believe so, absent possibly additional resources, but I would need to ask about that question. Just to color in slightly more, so just Senator Weeks, to your question, one of the requirements here is the licensing requirements for professional educators. That is, those are the licensing rules of the state standards board for professional educators, and so they're in conversations about potentially waiving some of those requirements to make it easier to enter the field. My understanding, again, this is hearsay from speaking to some of the members of the field, is that there needs to be more work done on recruiting prep programs. My understanding is those conversations are ongoing, but there's not really an easy legislative fix. We did identify this as something we talked about in advance. I didn't really adequately provide you that. This pilot program we're recommending is the product of some conversation between DMV and AOE for at least since the spring or since the fall of last year. And so this is a good thing that we can resource on a pilot model, see if it's helpful in alleviating some of the pressure and potentially spin it out statewide.
When would we see a return on the investment that the agency and AOT are working on related to training teachers?
I don't know that answer, but we could
If you
get
could find that out.
sort of
that
what
would be great.
the timelines are there.
Yeah, I'm still confused. So in line 7 through 9, again, we're talking about now the development of a model program. This training's in a can already, isn't it? It's already, I mean, we know how it's done. It's a matter of where we do it and who we do it with. I'm just kind of at a loss of what we're trying to accomplish here.
I want to just keep walking through a little bit because I'm missing some of it, and just maybe fill this in and then we'll put it chat again.
Sure. On line 7, subdivision
Yep.
1, the agency department shall appoint one or more certified driver education instructors who shall assist in development, and that should be pilot, since I missed that change there.
So
That's the
Ted,
pilot program.
this is all new stuff, right? This is not happening right now. Driver's ed programs right now, if you have a driver's ed teacher, your kids are getting driver's ed. If you don't, this is an opportunity where the agency is really getting involved, somewhat surgically, if you will, plopping somebody in to say, okay,
Correct.
and to give those people those 6 hours behind the wheel because there's a shortage, while at the same time you're training teachers.
That's accurate, and I have planned a few bullets to speak to, and I want to wait if you're okay.
Yeah, we'll wait.
That's able to go through, but yeah, it's being offered on a district by district basis right now in terms of we're looking to try and do something slightly different.
St. James.
On line 10, subdivision 2, the pilot program shall be designed to be implemented on a regional level with an adequate number of programs provided to meet the reasonably anticipated needs of all public and approved independent schools participating in the pilot program. The agency and department shall partner with participating school districts to define regions. Line 15, the pilot program shall meet all legal requirements of student driver education and training programs. Line 17, the agency and department shall adopt policies, procedures, and guidelines necessary to implement the pilot program. Line 19, subdivision B, implementation. Regional pilot programs developed in accordance with, and again, this should be pilot instead of model. Program created under subsection A of this section shall begin offering student driver clinics on or before. And then this is, I think, my understanding is this date has not been confirmed by AOE as a realistic date. But right now, the draft has by July, on or before July 15th, 2024. So they would develop the program before December 15th, and they've got to go live in those partnering districts by next summer.
So do we get so the rest is the appropriation, do we get a report back on the pilot?
This draft does not have that requirement, but you can certainly add it.
I would certainly, I for one would like to report back to see, I mean, whether or not we were successful, how many students were trained during this time, and some kind of, something for that legislature at that point to say, gosh, this worked, or this didn't work.
Do you want an interim report next session about what the rollout is going to look like, or do you just want a final report in 2025?
The reason an interim report would be helpful is because this is going on at the same time some of the training of teachers is going on. So just to see if there's any overlap or anything that we need to know, any direction we may need to give. So both reports, the interim and the final. Senator Weeks and then Senator,
No question. I still don't get it.
Senator,
I want to speak to my colleague, because I am looking at Barbara Brody's testimony that we have in our folder, and you're right, that and I remember this too, she's talking about how White Mountain College in New Hampshire was providing this course that wasn't actually training the teachers, and they were undercutting Keene State, and so Keene State had to drop their program.
Now there's no program.
Yeah,
Right.
so that caused a real problem.
That's-
The only program is through White Mountain, but it's not appropriate because they don't do any of the driving instruction. They just give them like a book training. So,
That's a simple problem. Problem is, we don't have enough trainers. We don't have, to perform the behind the wheel section of the training. The other bit, the academic bit seems to be in hand. But there's a shortage of behind the wheel certified instructors in Vermont. That's the problem.
yeah, it seems as though what Ms. Brody is asking for is to bring a program back to the state universities. In particular, she mentions Castleton Center for Schools. So I don't know, how do you legislate that? Can we
well, it's actually, that's really interesting. What we could put in there is, if that's one of our goals, one of the things we could ask for, a couple of things. I mean, the committee may say, all right, we want to stop this. But to me, it seems to be one of the issues out there that we have to solve, is that kids aren't getting trained to drive. And this seems necessary to me to kind of even as a filling a hole. But we could also say one of our goals is to indeed bring a program to the state. And I didn't even realize that I guess, not prior to Ms. Brody talking about everything we were relying so much on New Hampshire. Is there a way for us to bring a program in the state using, I don't care if it's CCB, which of the state colleges, but some kind of training program to our state colleges and universities?
So that is, sorry, that is her ask. It is important that not only AOE and DMV recognize institutions in our state who will provide the certification courses, but that they discontinue recognizing White Mountain Community College and not certify teachers who attend that program. That was sort of her focus at the end of the testimony.
And we can't take the role of discertifying, or what's the word, uncertifying somebody. But what we can do is, if the committee is interested, move forward with this, get an update halfway through the process around how some of this training is going, but also help move us in the direction so that we do have a program in the state that would train drivers and teachers.
I love that you're all looking at me. Who would be doing that work?
To add what Senator Lewis said, is they were looking at doing it at Vermont State University. It's like the teaching program, and then have driver's education as like an additional skill identifier for certification. So they have a ready pool of educators, and they would also be given the additional skill.
Yeah,
So it has to be a state program,
right.
and the university would have to certify.
Kind of goes back to also what we were talking about. I don't want to give them the answers, so what is the best way for us to actually certify new drivers ed teachers? It might not be a program at Castleton, frankly. How do you get everybody there? It
It
might,
used to be White Mountain.
Well, I think Barbara wants people to have some actual driving experience before they go and teach kids how to drive. And they're not getting it right now.
the teachers themselves.
Yeah,
Because there's a shortage of training opportunities to give that teacher.
there's apparently there are
Right,
no training.
right, so right, there. So next to near the crisis level of not having newly certified driving instructors. We're behind.
Yes.
Please, let.
Yeah, no.
So again, having listened to this now for a couple months, I thought that, I thought that. I thought that
It
we-
does, why? I only think it's been 2 days, but go ahead.
I thought that we would essentially have a program.
Yeah.
Which is already, it already exists.
Yeah.
Okay. The
But
state has.
where is
requirements.
That's what I'm trying to,
It was at
Wait,
at White
White
Mountain,
Mountain or
in New
Keene or-
Hampshire. Yeah,
Right.
okay.
That's where we got our driver, behind the wheel driver certified, maybe the
Yeah.
whole program, but at least behind the wheel bit.
Okay.
I thought the concept was, excuse the military
I'm watching.
windows, but you airdrop
Yeah.
an instructor into a regional area, the schools in that area send their behind the wheel driving, behind the wheel driving instructors to that site. They all go through the practicals. It could be Castleton, it could be a high school, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
You just have an open classroom. The teachers, the instructors get their behind the wheel certification. It's blessed by whoever blesses those
Okay.
qualifiers now. I don't know if that's the Agency of Transportation or Education. In any case, it's the same people. It's just a mechanism to distribute that training around the state, and it's repeatable in different sites.
Yeah.
And it's a pilot. If it works, hey, we've got a solution. It's just, it's low cost. It's not about facilities.
That's our structure.
That's what I thought we were.
I like it. Yeah, please.
Can we have language that says the AOE shall not recognize White Mountain Community College as a certifier?
We really can't do anything. I just think we would be dipping our toe into taking a lot of testimony between now and when the bill has to go out around the White Mountain. One of the things we could do, and I commit to you, if you want to pursue that, we do have a House Miscellaneous Education Bill coming, and that is a vehicle for us to send back other things, and that could be something.
To that.
Totally.
You'll get that bill. It was on the floor today.
Yeah, and I'm not trying to shut anything down. It's just, I just don't know how we get this
Gotcha.
out. But could we do a pilot outlined as Weeks, right? Senator Weeks said, while at the same time, then the question is, does this part need to happen at the same time?
So
I don't know.
if you're asking,
Yeah, I
my
am.
feedback, no, because you're taking care of a symptom. You need to take care of the problem. We can take care of symptoms all day long, and we're right back where we were tomorrow. I think we need to take care of the problem. The
You
problem
can take
is,
care of a symptom and a problem at the same time. You could do
yeah,
both.
don't focus on the students, focus on the trainers, and then you solve the problem with the students. That's just why you're doing two efforts when you need to do one and it solves both.
One quick question, Mr. Fisher. So what Senator Weeks is saying does seem to make sense to me, a pilot. I could also see doing this also, just to make sure, we've got more people out there, but can you just give us some feedback on this?
For the record, Ted Fisher, Vermont Agency of Education. Just trying to figure out if we could figure a way to talk to Senator Weeks and a little bit more about this idea. I have my driver's ed people telling me things that I don't, well, trying to listen to you, don't really understand about how this isn't going to work. My understanding of the problem is not that there are great numbers of educators or potential driver's educators who are clamoring. We do have a pipeline problem. There are ways we can adjust it to make it easier for people to become, but I don't think we can, the regional model of sending folks in to train, we're talking about that on the more efficient ways to train larger numbers or to teach larger numbers of students. I'm not sure if that's going to be workable in the context of our current system. It's something we could talk more about, but I think with your timeline in advance of crossover, I'm not sure if it's something that we're going to be able to get figured out in the next couple of days. I can't speak to it fulsomely at this point. My understanding is that the trainer idea is not, we don't internally think it's going to work as well as potentially some other options that are already being pursued. One of which is trying to,
But
I
because,
don't
okay,
have a good reason.
that's what we need the answer to, is why would the trainer not work from your perspective?
My guess is that it's probably, so there are two driver's education certifications. One is governed by DMV and covers private, for lack of a better term, private or DMV certified driver's educators. And then there is an educator licensing model for driver educators who provide instruction in public schools. And that is something that we're looking at right now in terms of making sure that those requirements are aligned. But there is still an educator preparation program that has to happen. There are still, you're working with kids, there's some child protection things that need to be worked out, and there's still that kind of process. So that's where this might actually be a great question about training the trainer, might be a great question for the standards board. My concern isn't that its solution is just, and I hate to say this because I have great respect for the legislature. I used to be legislative staff in another state before moving back to Vermont. But I'm also cognizant that not everything is something that there is a legislative solution for. And it's kind of our perspective right now that there is one thing that there is a legislative solution for, and that's trying to address the immediate resource needs that some districts have, and that they do not have a driver's education instructor available for them at all, which means they don't have a driver's education program. And there's a couple ways we can solve that in terms of the classroom piece that we're already in progress on. This pilot would allow us to try to solve the on-the-road piece. That's kind of the nutshell.
Could you come back in halfway through when we would get could you come back in January and let us know how we're doing with training teachers for driver's education? Could we?
One of the
put that
reasons
in this?
why we asked Beth to change the date from October 1 in terms of staffing of the program to December, and aside from my comments earlier about giving us a little bit more time to work out the pieces and parts, but the December 15th date is intentionally picked because we know that that'll give us an opportunity to have the program fully set up in time for us to give you an update in January when you come back into session.
On the train the trainer programs.
That was specifically to establish the pilot program, which we would still like to do.
Right.
I'm sure that with that
Put some
timeline, we can
language in
also.
there that would require that they come back in January to give us an update on, based on all the things that you said that are happening out there, which I get. There's, how do you train, how do you get people trained, how do you get the pipeline of workers there, all that stuff. But we would like an update in January on how the train the trainer program is going.
So it's not gonna get fixed in 2 years.
We'd like it updated this coming, we would like a report actually this coming December. So December 2023. I mean, I get what you're saying. It sounds like maybe there can be some additional conversations in the hallway between you and Senator Weeks to see if it can be come to Jesus. I don't know if that's the right thing to say, but coming together or not. I'm not.
She was reading from transcript of the day they came here
Yeah.
and told us and appealed to us to do this.
Yeah.
That's,
Yeah, no,
I can't
yeah.
remember the lady's name, but
Barbara Brody.
she was a driver's ed.
Oh, she's incredible. And I'm also
Oh,
very happy if anybody wants to bring in different language tomorrow, working with Beth, we can amend this. I'm completely open. I'm not sitting here thinking, just love to get something where everybody's comfortable and that we are actually doing something around getting kids driving, etc. So you may have a conversation. You might get a call from Senator Weeks that says, hey, I'd like this drafted. If so, we'll bring it back in tomorrow. In the meantime, could you put language in there that says, at the very least, we want to check in December to know how the trainer program is going. Senator Weeks, question.
Oh, I know. Trying to figure out how we heading down 2 different paths simultaneously.
Yeah, Ted. Don't identify yourself, no need. We got
But how all the people want to. I would still like to, if with the committee's patience, like to go over the program a little bit, but I'm also happy when to give a small update on this certification process, which I just got some info from my colleagues, I think might be helpful in terms of understanding what the dynamics of a potential.
Why don't you start with that?
So.
Do you want me to have Ted come up
Yeah,
here?
you're fine. Don't mind.
So I'm gonna not use the term train the trainer because with all due respect to you, Senator Weeks, and I know that other people have been mentioning it, but I don't think it's accurately portraying both the process of certification and licensing for both DMV approved and licensed Vermont driver educators. There are 6 courses that are required for both programs. Essentially 6 college courses. For someone working through those courses part-time, that means a year to be certified. So we're talking, it's a little bit more than it's somewhere between a campaign and a tactical strike. We're not talking about a full educator preparation, like 4 years of college type of thing, but it is
6 classes,
time
6 3-credit classes.
And I clarified with them to make sure that applies to both programs. It does. The difference in requirements between what are required of licensed Vermont educators and what are required by DMV approved driver educators is that the AOE requirements are for a bachelor, the Vermont State Standards Board requirements are for a bachelor's degree. That is one thing that we are looking at with the Standards Board. We are also talking to, my understanding is at least one educator prep program in Vermont to see if they can bring those courses for prep into the state so that we have a good solution to there. I don't know, short of you guys passing a law requiring one of them to do it, whether or not that's a legislative fix, right? So
Bringing who into where
in
exactly?
terms of bringing one of the programs in, I don't want to, I can't speak much more to this, but we've been speaking to Castleton.
Okay.
So I don't know the process of those conversations much more than that. So I'm not really confident.
Yes, Sorry, if I could, so these 6 courses, are they unique to their educator preparation courses, or are they unique to, I mean, are they, so you get a bachelor's, you become an educator. These are 6 courses which, or subset of those are part of that curriculum already, or these 6 courses that are just dedicated to driver training, period?
Rest dedicated to being a driver educator. And that's, and what they are exactly, I don't know, because we could provide more information to you about sort of what exactly those prep programs look like. But the problem remains that we did not have a program in state. We're looking at trying to bring a program back. We can certainly provide it, if you wanted to add a reporting requirement to the section, we can certainly provide an update on those efforts as well as other recommendations, or maybe more fulsomely describe the issues. My wonderful team is trying to get me a list of courses right now, just as if you're hearing buzzing. But we can certainly provide more of that information, but it's not something where we can just sort of take someone off the street and train them. What we are trying to do is provide a method where if someone who is a licensed educator already endorsed in another area, the example I'm hitting on today is a math teacher, that person can provide the in-classroom instruction. They won't be certified to do the driver training. And I think I would argue for many reasons, one of which is safety, you really need a driver educator for the students to do the beyond the wheel stuff. So that's where the pilot program comes in.
Okay, but back to Senator Weeks's question around 6 classes. Would we ask the Vermont Standards Board to review the drivers, what it entails to become a driver ed teacher? Because that would also be interesting. I mean, just sort of just look at it and say, hey, do you need those, whatever those 6 classes are? Or is that really what you need? I don't know. Is it sociology of driving?
Let me ask.
Okay.
My understanding is that those conversations are already happening, so it may not be necessary, but let me ask. I have an answer. Licensing is already having that conversation and reviewing what the requirements are. So, and then licensing is a unit of our education quality division, which does teacher licensing. So we're on it, as it were.
So it sounds like though in December, we would like to get a pretty comprehensive report back on everything that you're on.
Sounds good.
Okay, we can't use that language in drafting a bill, but I think Beth has a sense of what we're looking for.
I can also connect with you afterwards about.
Barbara and I once went on a drive. She took me on a drive years ago when I was visiting West School. And we were gone forever. Joey Donovan thought she brought me to the border and dropped me. And we were gone. She's a great teacher. She's a great teacher. Senator Weeks, how does that feel to you as being quickly becoming the?
No, I'm just so confused with what our problem is. If it's, we're trying to train a handful of students or a handful of trainers. Or
I'm thinking I could be wrong, but I think it's both. And we need to understand what all the steps that you're all taking to train trainers, while at the same time, and I think this is one of the reasons Senate Transportation sent this down to us, was they are also concerned that kids just aren't getting trained. So we've got to kind of do both at the same time.
I think there's gotta be a federal program, either NTSB or National Highway Safety Program that establishes that standard nationwide that you can take those standards from. You know, I think that you shouldn't have to reinvent the wheel. I'm sure it's out there.
Yeah.
We can, and to Senator Goulart's issue about White Mountain, if we set a standard that's higher than what they do, then that takes care of that.
Yeah, Jay.
Try to make a point of not talking to one body about what the other body is doing, but if the House passes its workforce bill on educator workforce, you're going to be grappling with very similar problems, but for the education system as a whole. And if it seems difficult, it's because it is. We don't have enough teachers across a whole range of subject areas, but there's also the essential imperatives that we can't just, they have to be grown, they have to be developed. It takes time. Teaching is a very difficult profession. There are lots of requirements and competencies, and I think I don't want to say we're looking at every way we can make it streamlined, and that's not just true of driver educators. But it's certainly true. It's certainly true to this conversation. But I want to just say that it's an issue across the board, and we're looking at every way we can. But it may not solve. We're not going to have instantaneous solutions, and we already do a lot of things like, to your point a second ago, Senator Williams, we have licensing reciprocity with most other U.S. states, that educators trained in other states with license there can come here, get their license. Those kind of things we already have. My guess is that national standards are probably part of the curriculum for driver educators. You know, it's just a tough challenge, unfortunately. But what we are, to the last point, and the reason why we're advocating as an administration for this pilot program is because we do believe that we can do more to solve the problem that schools do not have access to a licensed driver educator. And there are students who are unable to therefore access driver education. We'd like to pilot this approach as a potential alternative while we're trying to solve the pipeline problem.
I'm just thinking that I'm a math teacher. I'm tired of the classroom, and where can I go to get an additional identifier that gets me trained as a driver's ed teacher because I want to drive?
I'm a math teacher and I want to make a little bit of extra money. I think that's one of the things.
Yeah, I think
idea is
that's
that
the issue.
if you're willing to do some extra time, you might get a little bit of extra money. You might get some more compensation for doing the extra hours.
Senator Goular, I've only scheduled another hour on this. So
Can I suggest that we do this and really start diving into a workforce shortage around education? Because I think we can have some great conversations and maybe put some legislation in around that when we get that House bill. Add to that or edit or amend it.
but still keeping this pilot, but also just getting a report back on but also getting a report back in December saying, hey, this is where we're at with training teachers around this, so that we don't lose sight of.
Because otherwise we're stuck in.
No, I get it. Yeah. But another approach to the same goal is drop this language, pick it up in the House, miscellaneous education bill, give us ourselves a week or two to get our head around what's really being asked for. Because I'm not quite sure we understand what the problem is we're solving.
Well, the good news is we don't have to vote this until Friday. But it has to be voted Friday, so we'll get some new language tomorrow with the study piece. Let the two of you have a conversation, and see if people are feeling better.
Let's say, so Mr. Chairman,
Yeah, please.
my first inclination is I'm just gonna go back to all the original testimony, just take it day by day, and try to figure out what they were asking for.
Well, so testimony is what I read to you. That was part of
Yeah, I just want
the
to see there's something more, because I think you read it the way I understood it, which is, pardon my, train the train. That's really what I thought we were trying to solve.
And it sounds to me like in an ideal world, we would be, but there are workforce shortages and also some real 18 credits in college, 6 classes, 3 credits each. That's a lot.
There's a lot.
It's a lot.
Surprise.
So is that.
So that's all you're talking about, Ted, is H416, and it's in the House Education Committee today.
So certification and licensure would be that's a whole other body of work that I don't think we can do here. Correct?
Yeah, I mean, I think we can get a report back on
Yes.
how they're doing with certification and licensure because it sounds like they've got a bunch of things that they're working on to get us to train the trainers, certify the educators. So we need an update on that while we also move forward so that kids can, in the meantime, get driving. And part of the problem, I think, is even if we wanted to train the trainers, there's nobody out there to train
No,
as an educator who could then do it. Sounds like that's part of the workforce issue. So if we could look at some more new language tomorrow, that would be great. Senator Weeks may also have language, and then we can keep working on it, which I'm totally fine with. I want to get it right and want to make sure folks are happy. Good. Okay, let's just keep working backwards.
Okay,
I
I
know you have
do
a hard stop at 4:30,
4:25-ish.
4:25-ish. When you need to go, you go.
I will leave mid-sentence.
Absolutely.
Where do you want to go from here?
So I wanted to we are going to hear from the library working group tomorrow on Senator Hashim's section, but I did hear from them, and what they would like to do, if we are comfortable, they would like to just kind of broaden the gun conversation to public safety protections. And so that is what they are going to weigh in on tomorrow. They are also going to because their reasoning, and I'll let them speak tomorrow, is they're already getting some comments about this issue. They like to keep pulling it apart. They don't want to limit it to just sort of firearms. They'd like to come back and talk about public safety protections. And they're also going to ask us tomorrow for an extension on that working group, because they are feeling like they've got a lot ahead of them. Keep working back. We put in a $350,000 appropriation to the general fund. We'll see what happens when that goes to testimony, to approach. We had some good written testimony from Senator Watson on proficiency-based learning, but she just sent it to me, so let me kind of make sure she wants it to go public, but it was really helpful. I think basically it supported the work, but it might do give us a little bit more focus. And then is section 2, that's the part where the Agency of Education weighed in on.
Yes, the curriculum audit. So before, this was I believe a reporting requirement that there was like a survey of all the course offerings.
Yeah.
supervisory union, and then we added approved independent schools. And then this language reflects comments by AOE, but I would encourage you to take further testimony from AOE on it. And so we're on page 4, section 2 of the bill, line 15, curriculum audit report, requiring the agency of education to contract with an independent third party to conduct and report on a curriculum audit of at least 4 supervisory unions or supervisory districts, all of which shall have a high percentage of students who are approved for free and reduced price meals. And then the report is due January of next year. And there's an appropriation of $200,000 to AOE to contract that third party to do the curriculum audit.
Yeah, please.
Why do I see independent schools in there?
You do or don't?
They're not, they're not.
I guess I'm confused why we're only doing a curriculum audit of supervisory unions or districts, all of them having a high percentage of students with free and reduced lunch. What about?
So I would say any approved independent school also should.
Within the supervisory
that,
union, that's
yeah.
correct.
But I think what we're trying to get at here is the free and reduced lunch. We're looking basically to kind of surgically say, if there are districts where kids aren't getting certain things because of tax base, because for whatever reason, is there a way for us to go in and make sure that we're just aware of those districts and make sure that those kids are getting those
But
things?
we won't know what they're missing unless we have something to compare it to, right? So we want to be able to say, well, this district offers all of these things and this district doesn't, so like a comparison, right?
I think it's a good point. We'll hear from AOE tomorrow. I mean, to be honest, the one thing that just keeps coming up in all my conversations, and I guess this wasn't on my radar, that this place called CBU has a lot of bells and whistles. And do we want every school in the district, in the state to be like a CBU and around equity and that kind of thing? So we can have AOE come in and do stuff that.
If you want to build in for comparison, there would
Yeah.
need to be criteria for how to pick the other supervisory unions. So what would that criteria be? So I'm just food
It's
for
great.
thought.
Yeah.
for thought.
Yeah. I'll think about it tonight. You too.
Now, do you want this done for crossover?
I mean, we've got to give the House something.
Right.
School marketing.
Yeah.
There was a value plugged in now. Just wondering how you.
We
how
asked,
we-
asked joint fiscal to come back and sort of let us know if that's kind of.
So that's 10% of the current budget. Okay, so,
We'll see
yeah, we
what
could
they
really
say.
send a message, right?
Yeah. I have a feeling we're gonna back into some, well, we'll see what appropriations does, but yeah. Yes, and go ahead.
Did we also have a conversation about curriculum versus course offerings, which are very different things?
So this is recommended, this is what AOE recommended, and so my direction was to draft something based on the AOE recommendation, and my understanding from that testimony is that there is a art and a science behind a curriculum audit that exists.
Right.
And that was a suggestion for you all of an alternative to sampling all the courses in the state, and which is the language that we had originally. It's a pure policy choice for you all on what you'd like to see. But
And hear from the agency a little bit more tomorrow. As I see it, I know you're gonna have to jump. We are hearing from, on this bill, miscellaneous education, the Agency of Education, in a couple sections, libraries on that one section, AOE probably on driver's ed, as well as others perhaps on driver's ed. Trying to think if there's anything else. So just so that we can sort of get to, and I'd say if anybody wants to hear from anybody else on anything related to this, because we can still pull ad, we just have to move something by Friday. The other thing is on the language for the agency, or for S56, we're hearing from Dr. Crossman and Jay Nichols tomorrow. Okay. So all we're really working on, pre-K language, miscellaneous ed, school safety. Which we should be fine moving all those. And keeping in mind, they probably won't make it to the floor until April, I'm guessing, because there'll be money committees. So they're always, if we figure something out midway through, and we say, hey, we could need to tweak that, we could always have the appropriations committee do an amendment. As you probably watched S5, they did 12 amendments to it. So we can do all sorts of things. Yeah.
None of these other bills would get over in time of crossover.
The only way any of these will get over, well, I shouldn't say that. Some of them will end up on the science education bill possibly on the House side.
Okay.
And then the other thing is some of them are related to bills that are coming to us from the House.
Okay, because I was looking at S87, S120, and S116 as one that could be maybe fast tracked.
Yeah, and they could, not this week though.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, there's no, I mean, we have to sort of, bye Beth, thanks a million.
Thank you, I'll see you all tomorrow.
I mean, just the amount of testimony take, I mean, okay. But I could see 2, if not 3 of them going on this thing. Because there's nothing, and then the other thing is, just because crossover happens in the Senate, it's still move bill.
Okay, so
But just know that it depends on when you want it completely wrapped up. Because what some people will get annoyed by, you'll see our colleagues, and I get it. After crossover, people are going to be looking at bills and say, wait, this is an S bill, this is an H bill. We sent our S bills over, shouldn't we just be dealing with H bills? So if you really want something, and remember, all these are up for next year too. If you really want something this year for sure, then I would say the best vehicle would be the miscellaneous education bill that the House is sending.
gotcha.
Right.
Okay, cool.
Can I make that one observation? So for the Vermont Spirit Socks of the Day Award,
Oh,
I think we'll all take a look at 10
You
socks.
just had a
Yeah,
long
that's-
conversation
Oh, did
about
we?
it.
no, I didn't. Senator Gulick
Should
did.
we,
No, I think, well, there's no chairs meeting today. It was canceled, so that is good. I think the only other question, is there any, if there are any concerns or people that you want to see in before we vote this, now is the time before Friday. I mean, we're gonna see some, sounds like the big things are gonna be on, some stuff related to, whatchamacallit, God, driver's ed.
which we've already hashed out.
So potentially,
Please.
can we have there seems to be 2 primary players. There's the gentleman with mustache, who seems to be, he's the,
Oh, Joe,
He's
yeah,
got a 1/4 inch wrench on his
that's right.
tie clip.
what is it?
He's got the 1/4 inch wrench
Oh,
on his
yeah.
tie clip.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
It's a 3/4
Can
French.
can we get him on like short standby? For
Yeah.
Thursday or something like that, just
You
get him
get them on
queued up
short
and
standby for
if we
tomorrow.
figure it out
Yeah.
ourselves, good
Yeah.
on us, if not.
Yep.
Otherwise, no.
Okay.
So tomorrow?
Yeah, it's coming tomorrow. Great. Okay. Good. We'll get there.
Notter's barely hanging in.
I know. Nader, go get some rest.
Yeah, go get some rest. It's frozen.
It's bro-
We lost you. Oh, there you
Oh,
are.
there you go.
Oh.
That was fine.
Yeah, it's been pretty spotty, unfortunately.
All right. We'll talk to you soon. We're gonna adjourn for the day.
Sounds good.